everyone, I'm Allison and today we're going to make science slime. What you'll need to make your science slime is a mixing bowl, a spoon, some Elmer's glue, and Tide, and we're using Original Tide. And we have some optional ingredients as well. You can use some shaving gel or cream to make your slime a little bit smoother. You may experiment with some cornstarch as well. We're going to add a little bit of food coloring and that will make it a little bit messier, so keep that in mind. But let's get started. So first you're going to take your glue and measure out a ½ cup of glue. So I've got a measuring cup here and I'm just going to pour my glue in. We have a lot of glue. Alright. Scrape out the sides. And it might be helpful also to have a drop cloth or newspapers under you because you are working with sticky glue. This is a messy project. Okay, and if you want food coloring at this point, this would be a good stage to use it. I'm going to use some green food coloring and I'll just put in like 2 drops or so. Okay. And stir it up. It looks very green. And in my head I'm thinking, I know that Tide Original is blue, so I want to mix up my green and blue and see what happens. Okay, now we have green glue. So let's see what happens when we add our Tide. Okay, so with the Tide, we're going to use up to a ½ cup of Tide. And we're just going to add it in a little bit at a time, so you might not need that full amount, and I would say just start slowly adding it in and just see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to pour it in a little bit by a time, and I'm going to watch what's happening to my glue. I can see it's getting a little bit stickier, a little bit different than just normal glue right now. And you gotta stir it really well. I'm just gonna add in that little bit. It's getting a little bit goopy. Okay. It's starting to get a little thicker. It's starting to kind of stay in a ball a little bit more. But I know that if I were to touch it, it's still a little bit too sticky. So I'm going to add in a little bit more Tide. I haven't used my full amount yet. Probably put in about a third a cup at this point. Okay, a little bit more. Let's see how that goes. Okay, it's definitely changing now. And as you're doing this, I would encourage you to kind of stop and notice what's happening with your mixture and make a prediction about what you think will happen if you add more Tide. If you can see, it looks very different now. It's starting to kind of form into a ball more.
No, take that out.
Okay. And I'll just add a little more. It's kind of a monster green right now. And at this point, you might want to start mixing with your hands, and that will be very messy, so make sure that you've got the proper setup to make a mess. Okay, it's getting kind of fun. So now it's like, it's not sticking to my hands, and it's really interesting because it's, what would you say that this is? Do you think that this is a solid? Is this a liquid? It's probably not a gas. But just as you're playing with it, start to notice, like, what is this and how would you classify this? So I probably wouldn't add any more Tide at this point. It's sticking together. It's pretty solid. And at this point you might kind of experiment with your shaving cream or your cornstarch. And I think I might do that now. If this is the way that you like it, you could leave it here. Okay. I need something for my hands. I have a drop cloth, so I'm just going to wipe it on the drop cloth. Okay. And so I've got just a little bit of shaving gel. I'm just going to put in a tiny bit. Okay. Just a little squeeze of that. Okay. What do you think will happen when I mix this in? Let's see. I think, in my head I'm thinking, well, it might make it a little bit more liquidy. I'm not sure. But as you can see, it's starting to kind of soap up a little bit, which is kind of fun. It's feeling a little bit more smooth. Alright, this is pretty fun. And just keep playing with it, keep observing what's happening. This does take a lot of mixing up, so the more that you mix it, the more it'll change. And it's interesting because I sort of expected it to not stay all green, but it looks like the blue Tide didn't even change the color that much. It's still this really kind of like Hulk green color. Okay, I might add a little bit more cornstarch and see what happens there. As you can see, my hands are very messy, so definitely have paper towels or wipes on hand. I'm just going to add a little tiny sprinkle of cornstarch. And if you've worked with cornstarch before, you might be able to make a prediction about what it'll do. Do you think it'll make it more liquid or more solid? I might think it would make it more solid because I know it's a thickener. And it looks like that is starting to happen. So it's starting to get a little bit more like a silly putty texture, which is super fun. Alright. So there you have it. This is your science slime. This is best stored in a plastic baggie or a tight sealed plastic container. It's really fun, really messy, and hopefully it gives you a chance to think a little bit about solids, liquids, and just have some fun playing around and mixing up some messy stuff. Thanks, everybody.